So next we're going to talk about program sustainability and what we know from the research is important in terms of whether a program is able to be sustained or not. And I'm also going to provide a resource in the resource section of this module that can help you assess your program's initiative and its likelihood of sustainability. So definitions of what sustainability means differ by researchers, but in general, it's referring to what happens to a program or an intervention after grant funding ends. And it's important to say up front that not every single federal grant needs to be sustained. I can think of examples of one-time initiatives where it's perhaps purchasing a new statewide case management system and implementing it. Once you've done that, it may not need to be sustained except perhaps in licensing fees. But this particular slide deck is going to focus more on things that are programmatic in nature, that do have ongoing operational costs, ongoing personnel costs. This presentation is focusing on those examples. Most of the research that's been done on sustainability has found that grant-funded projects are typically sustained at a level of 80% or higher. So if you have a cohort of grantees, past research has found that about 80% of the grantees, their project will be sustained and will move forward even after the federal grant funding ends. So it's important to understand a little bit about the factors that impact the likelihood that your program will be one of those that is able to transition from federal grant funding to something that becomes more of an operational expense either within your court or within your county budget or within your community budget. So there are some things related to how the program or project is designed and how it's implemented that impact the likelihood of sustainability. There are things about the organizational setting and the extent to which the initiative is integrated into existing programs and services that determine sustainability, as well as characteristics of the broader community environment. So we're going to kind of talk through each one of those, and a lot of what I'm presenting on comes from a particular research article that was done on a variety of federal grant programs. And so I've given you the citation if you want to dig into this any deeper, or if this is a topic that you're just kind of curious about. I encourage you to go to the site that I have provided on the slide deck and dig into this even further. I've also asterisked certain things, and the asterisk next to an item is something that was found to be significant, meaning statistically significant, in a particular research report. These other factors are just generally agreed upon across a lot of research, but the asterisk is referring to the particular article I referenced. So in thinking about how the program is designed and implemented within your program, a couple things you want to think about. First, programs or interventions that are flexibly adapted and not rigidly structured tend to be able to be sustained. So for example, if you are interested in replicating a national curriculum, that curriculum may need to be modified a bit and be flexible in how it's implemented across your state in order for it to be sustained. The next one is sort of intuitive. If your program uses no paid staff or is able to be implemented with volunteers or is otherwise relatively low cost, it has a greater likelihood of being sustained. And if a program evaluation is conducted and the results show effectiveness, that it increases the likelihood that the program or initiative will be sustained. So looking a little bit deeper at your organization, your court, your partners who may be implemented, and looking at the factors related to that impact sustainability, the first is that it has to be a good fit between the initiative that you're implementing and the host agency's operating routines and missions. So sometimes there's a tendency to put a grant program in an agency because it's the agency that's willing to hold the grant. But if that agency is not really aligned with the initiative that's being implemented, there can be a lot of tension there, and it may lead to the program never being incorporated into the routine organizational processes and systems. And so it can be really viewed as just that thing that's being funded by the feds that never really becomes known or viewed as a new way of doing work. The key to sustainability is that you move away from it being perceived as some special initiative that is time limited and becomes seen as a new way of going about your business, a new way of processing certain cases, a new way of organizing your work. The next one has been found to be important over and over, and I think it speaks to hiring, which is that if the project leader is well connected to the community and with other funding sources. So if they're familiar with other federal funding sources, if they're familiar with state funding sources or local community sources, and are just generally well connected and have strong relationships, the likelihood that your initiative will be sustained increases. So that's something to think about when you are hiring, and it really speaks to the importance of who you hire and put in place as the project director. And then finally, if the organization has a strong capacity to carry out the program, it is likely to be sustained. The next area, which is more broadly speaks to partnerships and general involvement outside of your agency in the initiative, the first one is that the more diversified funding that's being used to support the project, the higher the likelihood that the project can be sustained. If 100% of the funding is coming from a federal grant, it gets riskier in terms of that project being sustained. So if, as your program moves along year to year, if you can begin to add some additional funding sources, if you can get pieces of it to be incorporated into your local budget, if you can get another grant and add some complementary services onto your initial project so that you have some additional funding, those things can be super important when it comes to sustaining your project. The extent to which the project director and other program leaders are able to really engage partners within the community and make them feel a part of the project and feel ownership of the project, that increases the likelihood of sustainability. And if the program activities and outcomes are shared regularly with stakeholders and decision makers in the public, there's a greater likelihood that the project will be sustained. So going back to a previous module around communicating your message, it really highlights why that is so important. And if there's external political support for the program, that can be important depending on the level of the project and the extent to which it would be of interest to the broader community. If there's support for the program, that increases the likelihood. So in the resource section of this module, I provided you a sustainability assessment tool. It's a 40-question self-assessment tool that multiple people can take. It takes about 15 minutes to complete, and it can be used to assess all types of programs and give you a sense of where your challenges may lie in sustainability and where your strengths are. So it can be part of your sustainability planning. Every federal grant agency will tell you that sustainability starts on day one of your project. So if you have just been awarded your grant, it's not too early to take a look at this tool, to look at the areas that it is asking questions about, and making sure that that's on the foremost of your mind as you move through your project. So that's it for program sustainability.